Whoa, Black River.
Okay, today I'm going to be talking about In the Shadow of Blackbirds by Kat Winters. If you have kept up with my channel, then you probably have seen, or not seen, if you haven't, please do, my review of her book, The Forgotten. Sorry, that one continues to escape my brain. She admits to having a fascination with World War I and the Spanish Influenza. So both novels do take place kind of within the same timeline and revolving around some of the same issues. In this one, I think it's going from like September or October of 1918 to November of 1918. But before I keep going into it, I'm gonna say I didn't like the audiobook, and it was hard for me to distinguish between my feelings of the audiobook and the actual story. This has been a favorite of mine for many years, and that is why I put it in my February lineup. But I certainly did not enjoy it the same way that I remember enjoying it. The narrator is the same woman who read Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and she did it by far a better job with the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants than with this one. I don't know if it's because the subject matter and the main character were much more morose and withdrawn, but she was putting me to sleep, and I think she did a disservice to this book. So I just want to say, don't listen to the audiobook. It's not going to be worth your money or your time. But back into the story. The main character is a young girl named Mary Shelly Black. She is from Portland, Oregon. She is coming to live with her aunt in San Diego because her father has been arrested. If you know anything about World War II, there's a lot of prejudice towards the Germans. Many people accredited them to the introduction and spread of the Spanish flu, which I think, well, not that part, but I think that this book can resonate with so many of us more than ever because of going through COVID. We can completely relate to quarantining, to hysteria, to masking up, to doing whatever we can to avoid getting sick. I thought it was especially humorous, the methods with which people resorted to fend off the flu. Did they really think garlic, like an abundance of garlic and onions, was going to ward off a microscopic organism? If they knew it was a virus, then an airborne virus, then why did they think that smelling to the high heavens was going to help them? I mean, when Mary Shelly chews garlic flavored gum, I want you to gag. I was like, what is going through their heads right now? Her father, not that he was German sympathetic so much, but he, from what I gather, from what I remember, he would speak out against certain things, and he would aid in certain causes, and this labeled him basically as a traitor to his country. He is arrested. She goes to live with her aunt in San Diego. By living there, she is reunited with her childhood friend Steven, or sort of. He and his family used to live in Oregon until grandparents died, and then they moved down to San Diego into this nice large house on the bay. He has an older brother named Julian, but Julian is a half brother. They do not get along. Winters, like I did not like The Forgotten. I wanted to, I just didn't. She did a very good job at making Julian unlikable and Steven sympathetic. But what happens is that Steven, in wanting to get out of this house, because his father has since died as well, he enlists in the military. He's not actually old enough, but he's able to get himself in. Julian has begun this photography, like this spirit photography business, which also I thought was so interesting. And I would like a book on that if Winters wants to continue this theme. It is people's desperation. Like, they're losing their loved ones in the war, and then they're losing their loved ones to this flu. And in their desperation and grief, they would go to these photographers who claim to be able to take a picture of you with the spirit of your loved one. So he's actually making quite a bit of money. But the rumor is that he's also an opium addict. It seems that he's not saving any of his money. He's spending it on drugs and on the lavishes of life because he has an image to uphold. Stephen wants to get out of this house. We do see flashbacks. We see letters between Mary Shelly and Stephen that show us and develop their relationship. And she had gone to visit. They essentially declare their love for each other. But Julian walks in and he catches them basically making out, maybe some heavy petting. And he spins this tale that they were doing things they should not do, which casts Mary Shelly into shame and blah, blah, blah. Stephen goes off to war. She arrives in San Diego and she hasn't heard from him in a minute. The first thing her aunt, who is a recent widower herself, wants to do is go to see Julian, because in Mary's last, and she goes by Mary because Mary Shelley, as in Frankenstein, is too German, and that is something that people have eschewed. Anything that has to do, books, music, anything. So she's like, I can't be associated with Mary Shelley, so I'm just going by Mary. When she had last visited, Julian had taken this picture of her that was then used as like the front piece for his advertising. And he wants to get another picture of her, although this time he wants it to enter into a contest that proves that there is an afterlife. She is resistant. She is in line with Stephen and then with Stephen's dad about the fact that Julian is a fraud. But nobody has proven that he's not. There's another guy, Mr. Darning, who his job is to investigate these spirit photographers and prove them wrong, and he has not been able to prove that Julian is not the real deal. Mary Shelley arrives at this house, and she's also there because Stephen has left her a package that his family has failed to send her. Things are just kind of off at the house. Within the sitting room, it's dark and it's cold and it's all spooky and it's super loud because the music is up so high. But then something falls overhead. Julian's mother cries out, and then it's like, oh, well, you gotta get out of here. We gotta go, tend to her. And then the next thing that Mary Shelley knows is that Stephen has died. She is so distraught that she flies a kite in a lightning storm with the intent of being struck by lightning, which she is successful at. And I gotta stop right here. 2 reasons. 1, Mary Shelley is extremely intelligent. I liked her as protagonist. I liked the way that she questioned things and the way that her mind worked. It bothered me though. Her mother had died in childbirth, and her mother had been a physician, which unheard of. If Mary Shelley is 17 and it's 1918, so that means the mother was a physician in the 1900s, like literally 1900. But she dies in childbirth, and now Mary Shelley carries her mother's old doctor's bag around as her case, and there's huge emphasis put on the fact that this is my mother's case. My mother was a doctor. It's not out of place, but at the same time, I couldn't help but wonder why we needed to hear this over and over and over. And it took me a long time to realize why her mother was dead, like what happened to her. What we do get is Mary Shelley sees the world and questions the world and analyzes the world the same way her mother did. But I would have liked a better reasoning for why we needed to continue hearing that her mother was a physician, because everybody would comment on this bag and she'd be like, oh, it was my mom, she was a physician. I wanted more from that. But my second thing, and this is sort of spoily but not really, This is my fourth or fifth time reading this book. I can never remember if Stephen actually died. I guess it's my mind pushing out the actual happenings for what I want to happen, but I was like, did he die? Did he not die? Because what happens is after she electrocutes herself, she technically dies, and then she comes back, she re-enters, only for her to be able to now taste emotion, and she can see Stephen's spirit, but it's so inconsistent and odd that it has you wondering, is he dead? Is he not dead? The big spoiler, or a big spoiler. Sorry, my knees really hurt after a while. I probably shouldn't sit like this, but I like it. So there we go. Stephen had actually been sent home from the war some weeks or months earlier due to shell shock. I would have loved to see more of this, not necessarily from him, but just in general, because I thought then when Mary Shelly volunteered at the hospital for like that one day, it was really interesting seeing the various figures that she encountered. I kind of would have liked it just specifically for him to have been explained a little bit more, because it makes it sound like he really wasn't even in battle before he started experiencing this. And so I just kept thinking, but he didn't experience anything. How can he have shell shock? Anyways, he could not handle being overseas. So they sent him home, and he had essentially just been at his home this whole time. Well, not this whole time, because I'm not going to get into that, but for months, nobody knew. They all just thought he was still overseas. He just was like battling these demons for months until the day that Julian is like, oh, we just got the notification that he died in battle. And so now Mary Shelly can see him. But as I said, it's so erratic that I'm like, maybe he's just really hurt. When this is me me knowing the ending, or knowing and remembering enough of the ending to know that he didn't actually die overseas, but I was like, was he just kind of sick and hurt and she was able to tap into that psyche now or something? It's for me, it's a bit tragic because I enjoyed their love story. And it seems like they didn't actually get much of it because they had their moment in the sun. He shipped out the next day. She comes home. And then now that she's back in San Diego, he's still off at war, or he is declared dead and they're burying him. We do get those moments where he comes to her in her room and they kind of get involved in some hanky-panky. It's a little strange considering he's not actually a real entity. But in this book, he kind of is a real entity. She's trying to understand what happened to him. It's difficult to make sense of it all, but he keeps saying that the birds are coming for him. The aunt, who I thought was actually quite annoying. I don't know if she's supposed to be annoying, but I thought she was a bit silly, inane. A silly little female who was afraid of everything and had no substance. She has a bird named Oberon. Stephen is visiting Mary. He's like, what is that? She's like, oh, it's a bird. He's like, you have to kill the bird. Eventually, further into the novel, he kind of does start possessing her. But at this moment, I thought it was out of character for her because he wasn't necessarily possessing her, but I guess his fear and all of his emotion muddled her. Like they kind of merged with her, even though she wasn't necessarily being possessed. That's the only explanation I can give for why she was like, okay. Because at first she puts up a fight. She's like, I'm not going to kill the bird. But then she obeys and goes downstairs to get scissors. And she doesn't end up killing the bird because her aunt catches her. But then her aunt is terrified of her, which I can completely understand. But at the same time, the aunt is so convinced that spirits exist. Because not only is she trying to contact the spirit of her dead husband, but she also wants to connect with her deceased mother. And so I was like, If you are so adamant about the existence of the afterlife and of spirits, why would this scare you so much? It didn't make sense to me. Mary Shelly kind of convinces her, don't be afraid of me, everything's okay, it was just Stephen. It really doesn't work, but now Julian is coming after Mary Shelly a little bit more because he wants the money. He wants to submit this picture, and she refuses to do it. She's also tired of being stuck at the house. She decides to volunteer at the hospital. While she's there, this is when she encounters a soldier who knew Stephen, and this is who reveals to her that Stephen has been home for who knows how many months. And then this is what gets Mary Shelly thinking, like, what's going on? Where is Stephen? What do people know about what happened to him? Like, where did their mother go? She, after Stephen died, had been sent to a sanitarium. In the end, the aunt catches the flu. We are assuming that Mary Shelly also has the flu, but at the same time, she is trying to get to the heart of the matter. She's closing the case, and she is often being inhabited by Stephen's spirit. She is convinced he was murdered because it is revealed from somebody else that he committed suicide, and he was like, I would never commit suicide. She convinces the guy who defrauds spirit photographers to take her to Stephen's house. They break into the photography studio because they can't get into the rest of the house. And they are confronted by Julian, who, the aunt, as I told you, I felt like she was kind of silly. She had been obsessed with Julian, and I guess she wanted him to return her affections, which is when it occurred to me, so if Julian's 24, 26, that means that the aunt is 28, 30, something. So she's quite a bit younger than her sister. So this whole emphasis about, basically how close she seemed to have been with her sister and how her sister would be disappointed with Mary's behavior. I was like, you guys probably have a 15-year age gap. Like, you didn't even know her before she died, because if she died when Mary Shelly was born and 17 now, and you're so you'd be like 13, and by this point she was out of the house and married. Like, anyways. But there had been this whole thing where this is another reason she was pushing Mary to go see Julian, because she wanted to see Julian, only for him at one point to have come to the house and accosted Mary because she refused to do what he wanted, and this burst the aunt's bubble because he was like, you're just a clingy woman, you need to get over yourself, like, it's never gonna happen. Anyways, they go under the guise of, okay, I'll sit for you, but we have to do it in Stephen's room because that's the best place to conjure Stephen's ghost. And they get up there. Mary has a vision of when Stephen died. Julian, and this was a surprise to me, I actually thought it was the cousin, but it was actually Mr. Darning, the fraud finder. So Mr. Darning's wife slash girlfriend slash paramour, whoever she was, I can't remember, had died from the flu, and he was so bereft that he wanted proof of the afterlife. And then you add this in with Julian's greed. They, thinking that Stephen was a lost cause, they were going to kill him so that they could catch his spirit leaving his body for this publication so they could win the contest. Things go badly wrong. Stephen grabs the gun. He is being poisoned. He is delirious. He's not in his right mind, let's put it that way. And so I don't know if he grabs the gun and accidentally shoots himself because he's holding it the wrong way, or if maybe one of the others in the struggle accidentally killed him. But in any case, he is actually dead. Mary Shelly is seeing all this. We are not clued into the fact. We only know it's Julian. We don't know that Mr. Darning is the other person, which I actually thought was a really good twist. But it also explains why he could never prove that Julian was a fraud, because apparently they even had earlier history together, so he was a friend. Like, he was never going to be able to prove that Julian was doing anything wrong because he doesn't want to prove that Julian's doing anything wrong. She sees this whole vision of this entire night. We see these images from Steven's perspective of what they look like in the dark with their masks with little lighting, and this is why he's obsessed with birds. A little chaotic for me. In the end, Mr. Darning assaults Mary. Stephen, in his ghostly form, grabs or takes a picture of it. Stephen then causes the windows in his room to break, and this injures the other two men. He instructs Mary Shelly to grab the glass out of the camera so she can take it to the police and prove what these guys are doing, only for Mr. Darning to hit her with the camera, kills her. So now she's up on the ceiling, and I thought, I don't know, I didn't really care for this moment. It's not like it was terrible, but at the same time, I was just like, I just didn't necessarily need it. So now she's up on the ceiling with Steven, and they're talking things out. He's like, you really need to go back into your body so you can prove what they're doing, which she does. And that's kind of where we end, where she's able to let Steven go. She's able to capture his killers. Both she and her aunt make full recoveries. So yeah, it's actually a pretty decent book. As I said, don't listen to it. You're not going to enjoy it. I did like the characters a lot more than in The Forgotten. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you've read it, or if you have, I love a ghost story. I do. So if you have any good ghost stories, please let me know. And yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. I don't feel like this was my best review, but it is what it is. It's time for me to go to bed. Bye.